I thought this would have been a lot better of a build, but I feel like in the next coming days with the trades, um, it's going to be pretty interesting to see what teams do addressing certain positions, addressing certain role players. But John Morant, this may be the end of it in Memphis. All right, that was the news.
And now, here we go. Hey everyone, it's story time. This is the Hot Press.
As we're getting geared to watch the big matchup between Oregon and Indiana in the Big Ten. What a season, and it's been an interesting season for UCLA. And I'm also curious to see what in college hoops, how this program is going to be looking. So to join us to talk more about that, Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer. So let's start with the fantastic, entertaining game we got last night between Miami and Ole Miss. And to me personally, I've been saying this about college football. They are not in the happy business. You cannot make every college football program or fan base happy at all with just the teams that are represented in it. You get the 8 best out of the 12, and the others are just basically your fill-ins of ones. They're just winning it out because they have to win their conferences, and the other ones is the best records and their common wins. So to me, I watched that game last night. Miami deserves a lot of credit with just the team they put together, the style of play, the talent on defense, and all it came down to was a one possession throw. Whether people are arguing if that was a PI call or not, I didn't see it. He didn't turn his head around, and so to me, I thought that was a well-fought game. But looking at that, do people kind of have a different speculation about what we truthfully think about with the college football playoffs outside of the whole Tulane and James Madison whole argument?
I mean, I think Miami should have been in this whole entire season. The fact that they were kept out of the rankings in the top 12 for a very long time, that was a problem. That was an issue that they just decided to fix in the last day of the rankings release. But they should have been in this entire time. And we're starting to see now with the expanded playoff, you can have a two-loss champion, if you will. And while I do feel bad for Ole Miss, they've gone through quite a bit. They fought their hardest. I thought it was pass interference. I'll be honest, Jake. It looked like it was pass interference, but it was great to just kind of forget all the nonsense, have a good game, go back and forth, and let college football be what it truly is, just a fun sport where the best of the best, when the lights are the brightest, have the most memorable moments in the semis of the finals.
Well, and because to me, I look at it this way. The obviously the college football committee, they ended up rejecting Trinidad Chambliss with his return back to Ole Miss. I'm looking at the way that Ole Miss played, and after the last couple of weeks with dealing with the Lane Kiffin transfer to go into LSU, and I got to give credit to a lot of this coaching staff, because to me, you dealt with so much in the coming days. The players are feeling a certain type of way, but Kewan Lacey and Trinidad Chambliss, they were playing outstanding. And I'm watching throw after throw, and I'm like, those right there, if you give me an offensive-minded coach in the NFL, if he declares for it and he lands there, I'm watching Jackson Dart and what he's doing right now with the Giants, and I think if they upgrade, maybe get a culture setter like a John Harbaugh, you get somebody that can then get the right-hand man, we're going to be watching Jackson Dart moving around a lot, find accurate passes. But with Trinidad Chambliss, he's making a case for himself as far as his draft stock goes for teams that can be very quarterback needy up and into maybe the first couple rounds or maybe a little later on down the stretch.
Yeah, I mean, it's sad that they didn't give him his 6-year waiver. What has he played, like 2.5 years? And the NCAA just can't figure it out. It's great to see that they're playing well. You talk about what P. Golding's staff is. I don't even know how much of it is his staff, right? With what's going over to Lane Kiffin, the back and forth over these last couple of weeks, how many guys could actually coach this most recent semifinal game? I'm pretty sure we're playing for a championship here, not a big pay raise or the market that Lane Kiffin is. But I think for Trinidad Chambliss, it's been a great story with what he did at Ferris State in the D2 ranks, was able to get elevated on the national spotlight with Ole Miss, get that job here in 2025 now into 2026. But at some point, you got to make the most of it. College football is now 5 to 6 years, and some guys only get 4 years. It's funny how that plays out, where some guys get waivers, some guys don't. But I wish the best for Chambliss. I know I'm not the biggest believer in the SEC as they start crumbling down, but I was rooting in a sense for Ole Miss to just kind of throw that Lane Kiffin nonsense out there and keep winning, even though Miami was also a great story in their own right.
Absolutely. So we got tonight's game, Oregon and Indiana, two of which obviously with familiarity with UCLA being in the Big Ten. And my big thing is last time these two met, Indiana did whatever they wanted to in Austin. And Fernando Mendoza, he's just throwing it. And he's got really good pass protection to where they are allowed to drive down the field. Defensively, they are highly motivated and highly physical. So I feel like this go around, and I love Dan Lanning. I think he's done great things in Oregon. And with Dante Moore, it sounds to me it's trending in the direction he's going to declare. So he'll be another top quarterback up and into this draft class with Fernando Mendoza. But that means we got to have a flawless game out of Dante Moore. The pass rush has to come alive against Indiana because they've been willing to protect. Watching that Alabama game, and how many times that the interior D line kept trying to fight to at least break through to get to Fernando Mendoza. They only did it most on the outside, but not much has come up from the interior side. So what's the game plan that you might see from this? Because I think quarterback play, it's going to be smart decision throws. It's going to be cancel out the noise that you know is going to get loud in this game. And then at the same time, trench warfare from the ground game, and then fighting for every yard, but then also stopping each and every potential yard that may come from the opponent's side and win the time of possession. What do you think?
For me, I think the biggest thing, what Curt Cignetti's been able to bring to Indiana is an arrogance, a physicality that when teams are trying to be on the rise, the Cinderella program that Indiana has gone from Cinderella to now favorite as the number one overall. So you got to bring a physicality. Generally, when you see teams come out of nowhere in the older days of college football, whether it's the BCS, the 14 playoff, whether it's Cincinnati making that CFP years ago, they just generally weren't as physical. Well, Curt Cignetti made that team a lot more physical last year, and then upgraded this year. You get the quarterback in Fernando Mendoza, and everything's just working and clicking to the point that they just outmuscle you, they out-tough you, and they out-execute. For Dante Moore, obviously having seen him in a UCLA uniform, taking a year off, sitting behind Dillon Gabriel, and then thriving this year in his third year in college football, we knew he had the talent. He easily has the arm talent and the ability to throw the ball all across the field. For him, it's can he avoid the big mistake? And I believe it was Mendoza who did have the mistake in Eugene, kept that game kind of close late. I know one of the biggest things is what Indiana's missing their big leg kicker, if I'm not mistaken. But if for Dante Moore, it might come down to a drive late in the game. They're down 4, they're down 5, or a touchdown. Can he avoid the big game interception that kind of plagued his UCLA true freshman year? And I've seen a couple of picks, but largely he's erased those in his Oregon year to 2. What can he do when the moment's on the line? Because you got the Heisman winner on the other side, and if Dante Moore's trying to surpass him as the 1 pick or be alongside him as the 2, he's got to have his Heisman NFL draft pick moment in this game if Oregon's going to win over Indiana.
Absolutely love that. So getting into now the focal point, UCLA. So first of all, this was quite an interesting season for them itself in this football program because
that's easily saying it. That's the easy way to put it.
Yeah. And so to me, the way that I looked at this was Deshaun Foster, they let go of him. And now they've got a new coach coming in. And to me, the way I look at the Big Ten and when they first adopted USC, UCLA, Washington, and all them from the West Coast, once the Pac-12 was done, my biggest thing was in the Southern California area is that with USC, now the funny part is they were luckily able to figure out the defensive side of things because the Big Ten, they're physical. They're all about the trenches, run the football down and win possession, time of possession, because you watch Ohio State and Michigan and a lot of the other Midwest teams do this a lot. And so when I was fearful about USC, even though the offense was more pro, the only problem with it was, can the defense hold together a lot of that physical play? And the similar way I felt about UCLA, because you covered this team for a long time, and it's been quite a while since we've seen like UCLA make the moves as they did with the transfer portal and in the recruitment to where we got to stack up our offensive line. We got to now have a D line that's going to eliminate and limit out the run game. And then in the pass defense, get as much guys that can play the man-to-man, but then have the spotter and the safety side so that way when the ball's up, go and get it. And then the quarterback spot, Nico comes in. My personal opinion, I felt like this was more of a lifing type deal for Nico because he was going to figure it out one way or another post Tennessee. So when you think about this season and now going to work with the transfer portal now open and the recruitment process is happening year round, what now has to be the story for UCLA to climb themselves back in? Because once after Deshaun Foster got fired, and then, of course, the game against Penn State, I kind of saw some potential right there for UCLA to make some moves and maybe build upon what they've learned up from last year.
Well, the Bruins had some potential. They had some talent on the outside. There are some guys who are still getting recruited from this most recent year on other Big Ten squads, and they're not low-level Big Ten teams. UCLA's leading receiver, Quasi Gilmer, went to Nebraska. One of their edge rushers went to Nebraska. So guys are still being picked apart from this UCLA roster in the portal and going elsewhere. Even Andre Jordan Jr., one of UCLA's DBs, was visiting Auburn lately. The big problem is when UCLA was successful, the last true year they were good was 2022. Chip Kelly had an O-line that had a couple of NFLers on it. The defense had some NFLers on it. You had Leatu Latu, you had the Murphy twins. You had some guys who were walk-ons at the time, Carson Schlesinger, who were about to burst on the scene, or Kane Medrano. So the last couple of years for Chip Kelly, he was blessed with NFL talent on his team, some of which hadn't jumped out on the scene, hadn't burst on the scene, but they were physical up front, and he had talented O-linemen. 23 when UCLA started to kind of take a tail back to offensively. They weren't as physical up front, couldn't run the football. They had a true freshman quarterback. Then they go to 24. Chip Kelly leaves. He had really not truly gone into Southern California high school recruiting, focused on the portal, but couldn't get those 5 stars. The Bruins forgot that physicality. Deshaun Foster is left without a true physical front. Offensively, decent defensively, but not as good as that 23 defense. And then we saw it all fall apart in 25, where they weren't physical up front. They couldn't rush the passer. In 24, they were a good run defense. In 25, Utah ran all over them. Nebraska ran all over UCLA. They just weren't physical, and they couldn't truly get off the field on 3rd and long. So the big thing is, right now they have 20-plus transfer commits signed or about to come into UCLA. They're focusing on being physical in the trenches. If they can't, then it doesn't matter how many skill positions you get. They're just going to sit there and watch teams run all over them. They're going to sit there and watch teams throw it and sling it on 3rd and 10 like they did in 2024. It'll be a repeat. Bob Chesney, though, is a physical type coach. They ran the ball at JMU. The defense was very physical. 6 second-half shutouts with James Madison for their playoff team. I'm looking to see that identity brought to UCLA with better coaching, more coachable guys, and guys who are somewhat familiar with Chesney's system before he builds his own culture at UCLA.
And my big thing is with Nico Imalava, because, we know he's got the legs. We know he's got a good, talented arm. I just feel like there was some parts of his game. And when I watched up at Tennessee, it was like, I know he can make the throws, but there's times in which when he's facing like a Georgia or he's facing Alabama or even just the roundhouse he got against Ohio State, in the playoff. And my big thing is, it's all about improvisions, because I think of it this way. We watched a lot of these quarterbacks in the NFL do this. Jalen Hurts at times, if he's not throwing the ball, he's improvising with his legs. Nothing wrong with that at all. And you know what I say about this with Jalen Hurts is I've called him a UCLA name here for sure. The Russell Westbrook of the NFL, because he can drive. He can improvise. He can move a lot with his legs and not have to necessarily go for the 3 ball on oftentimes. So then when I look at Nico, I think he's got good amount of zip to where he can pass up for 20 plus yards, but now it's going to be the offensive scheme plan. So when you look at this, what's the expectation now? Because now coming back to UCLA, that means, look, I took a bit of a beating in the Big Ten, but I'm not backing away from what the challenges are going to be instilled for 2026.
The big thing is that Tennessee in 2024, they were physical, they could run the football, and Nico wasn't necessarily relied upon as much to lead that team to the playoff. They had a pretty good defense. Tennessee didn't have those same things in 25. They didn't make the playoff, even though Joey Aguilar, one-time UCLA commit, transferred over there in that Tennessee for UCLA switch. Going to Nico in 2025, started out with a first-time offensive coordinator. Tino Sunseri came over from Indiana, was trying to bring that Hoosier magic to the Bruins as the first time true play caller, and it didn't work out. Then he had to go with Jerry Neuheisel, where it was a magical moment against Penn State, where Nico used his legs, made the plays. They looked as physical and could handle the Penn State front, which was shocking, which showcases, you saw, some of the momentary magic. But it ran out, and the teams figured out if you put a spy on Nico and you don't let him run, then you got to force him to make the plays. And he took hits, he took hard hits. The Bruins couldn't protect. So Bob Chesney's goal in the portal is to get enough in front of him, enough depth to keep him upright. And the one thing we haven't seen, despite the lively arm, despite the ability to run, as athletic as he is, right? Sometimes he's scraping the ball on the ground, spinning out of a tackle to make a play. Can he make the reads? Can he make the mechanical adjustments? As a big quarterback, he's a lanky quarterback. He gets his ball batted down by the D-line way too often for being like a 6'6" quarterback. He's a big fella. Maybe not in terms of weight and girth, but he is tall and lean. And if you need a fourth and short, no need for a tush push. He can just reach over and get a first down, get a touchdown. It's can he make the reads? Now that UCLA, I think, should be a lot more physical, James Madison's offensive coordinator, Dean Kennedy, followed Bob Chesney to UCLA. They ran with a dual threat QB, Alonzo Barnett III. Similar makeup as Nico, but Nico's bigger, I think faster. I don't really know the official numbers there. And he's got a more lively arm. So they got the same quarterback that they did at JMU, but bigger, more highly touted and hyped in Nico with the better physicality in front of him. Now it's going to be up to him to prove that he's worth all those NFL bucks in the draft in 27, that he's worth all the NIL dollars that he was asking for at Tennessee and coming to UCLA to prove that he's worth. So we'll find out if he's actually what he's been built up to be or not. But I think as long as UCLA keeps him upright, this is his chance to shine in an offense that's designed better for him than any other one could be.
Man, I'm excited for it because, like I said, I felt like there is definitely potential in this program. And now with a new coach, new vision, and really trying to attack the transfer portal, I'm really hoping, especially for just the whole Western region, with just, you go up to the Pacific Northwest and come all the way down to the Southern California region. I really am hoping that the West Coast makes a lot of noise to compete up with the Midwest teams that we all know are all built for physicality, all built for strong protections, but then also fighting for those times of possessions. I really am hoping UCLA, they get up and into this point, but it seems to me this new vision and the way that they're going to attack it seems very promising for a lot of boosters and for a lot of the fan base in Bruins land to really be excited about this one here for the future. Zach, appreciate you for coming on by, my friend. Enjoy the game tonight. It's going to be interesting to see Oregon, Indiana, who's going to be worthy of representing as the next opponent to take on Miami in the national championship. Take care, my friend.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. All right, transitioning. 8 jobs open in the NFL and a lot of big shakeups that have